You felt it, those moments where life unfolds with eerie perfection. A friend calls the exact second you think of them. You miss a train, only to discover that delay prevented something far worse. Two strangers meet across the world, fall in love, and realise their parents were childhood friends. These aren't just cute anecdotes. They're cracks in the surface of what we call reality. The puzzle completes too neatly, and when it does, you have to ask, who designed it? In storytelling, this is called narrative closure, the satisfying end that ties every thread. But reality isn't supposed to offer closure. It's supposed to be messy, uncertain, irrational. And yet, across cultures and histories, we find lives that conclude like parables. Leaders assassinated on symbolic dates, revolutions beginning on anniversaries of forgotten uprisings, the Titanic sinking in a way that almost perfectly matched a fictional account published 14 years earlier in a novel called The Wreck of the Titan. Psychologists call this apophenia, the tendency to perceive connections where none exist. But there's a limit to self-deception. When lives intersect with almost supernatural precision, when deaths carry poetic weight, and when events rhyme across decades, something deeper is at work. Take the case of Anthony Hopkins. Before filming The Girl from Petrovka, he searched endlessly for a rare out-of-print novel the film was based on. He found nothing, until miraculously he discovered a copy lying abandoned on a bench in the London Underground. Later he met the author, who admitted that the copy Hopkins found was his own, filled with handwritten notes, lost years before in a taxi, a dropped book, a lost copy, a chance encounter, and a story that sounds more like fiction than fate. Yet it happened exactly as it would in a novel. This recurring precision disturbs more than it comforts. Because if the puzzle completes too neatly, then who's holding the pieces? During this video, we're going to explore the moments when reality feels less like chaos and more like code, when the background hum of existence stutters, when you catch the system adjusting itself around you. These aren't grand conspiracies or paranoid delusions. They're quiet observations, small glitches that, when viewed together, form a pattern too consistent to ignore. This is about the moments when you notice the seams. Let's start with something simple, something you've experienced but never questioned. You step into an empty room. The world is quiet, not just quiet, silent. The hum of appliances softens, distant traffic vanishes. Even your footsteps sound muted, like they're happening in a vacuum. It doesn't feel like peace. It feels like the environment is waiting, watching, or worse, deactivated. Here's the question that should unsettle you. If sound is only necessary when there are ears to hear it, then why render it when you're alone? In video game development, this is standard practice. Large open-world games use something called occlusion culling. Only the parts of the map near the player are actively rendered. Everything else exists as placeholder code, dormant, until you approach. Ambient sound works the same way. It plays only when relevant to the player's position. Why waste processing power on something no one's there to experience? So what if your reality uses similar logic? Think about those moments when you suddenly notice a ticking clock that's been there all along. It's not that the sound just started, it's that your awareness finally aligned with it. And when you're not paying attention, it's almost as if the sound doesn't exist at all. Some people report a specific kind of silence that feels dense, like it's pushing against your ears. Others describe strange delays to sound when they're completely alone. Leaves rustle a beat too late. A creak happens just after you've moved, almost like your presence is prompting the system to catch up, to fill in the gaps you're about to notice. This links to the observer effect in quantum physics. Particles don't take a definitive position until measured or observed. Until then, they exist in a cloud of probabilities. Could this principle extend beyond subatomic particles? Could your environment only finalize its sensory output, sound, temperature, texture, once you pay attention? If so, then silence isn't the absence of something, it's the placeholder, waiting for your observation to call it into being. Astronauts describe something similar. After returning from the International Space Station, many report an unnatural kind of silence in space. Out there, beyond Earth's atmosphere, there is no air to carry sound. Many said that even internal mechanical noises felt somehow artificial, thin, out of sync, eerily timed, as if the environment only made noise when it was needed, as if the machinery was more conscious than expected. One astronaut described feeling like the silence was watching him. So what do we make of this? Maybe when you're alone and everything falls silent, you're closer to the edge of the rendered world than you realize. Maybe the bird song you don't hear isn't missing. It was never coded in until you stepped outside. Maybe your footsteps echo differently, not because the hallway changed, but because it just came online to accommodate your presence. The next time you're truly alone, stop. Don't fill the space with music or scrolling or voices. Just listen. Notice what you hear, and more importantly, what you don't. The creaks that come too late, the wind that never picks up, the eerie stillness that waits for your next move, because in that moment, you're not just in silence, you're staring into the pause between rendered realities, and the silence already knows you're listening. Now let's go deeper, into the space where you have the least control, where your defenses are down and the system can observe you unfiltered, your dreams. You're walking through a place that isn't real, but feels like memory. Maybe it's a hallway from your childhood, maybe a field that never existed until you created it. And then suddenly you stop, because something is watching you, not a person, not a face, just eyes, floating, waiting, tracking your every move. This is not an isolated phenomenon. Across thousands of lucid dream accounts logged by researchers, forums, and personal journals, there's a pattern too precise to dismiss. People don't report being chased by monsters or followed by shadows. Instead, they see eyes, often pairs, sometimes clusters, not in faces, but suspended in space, watching without blinking, studying with cold awareness, as if something inside the dream is observing them, as if the dream isn't entirely theirs. One woman from São Paulo described walking through her dream apartment, only to find a pair of golden eyes embedded in the wallpaper. When she blinked, they vanished, but she still felt them there, behind the illusion, like a surveillance system cloaked in metaphor. A programmer in Berlin recounted a lucid dream where he knew he was dreaming and tried to manipulate his environment. Bend walls, fly, break time, but each time he broke a rule, eyes appeared in the sky. As if the system registered a violation. They weren't symbols, they were warnings. Some psychologists interpret these eyes as projections of self-consciousness, fragments of the brain watching itself. Lucid dreaming is a rare state where the conscious mind wakes up inside the subconscious. In that moment, boundaries blur. You are both actor and observer. Maybe the eyes represent your own internal monitoring. But that explanation doesn't satisfy everyone, because some dreamers report the same feeling, that the eyes were not them, that the gaze carried weight, pressure, and most disturbingly, external intention. One user on a deep dream forum wrote, "It wasn't like I was being watched by myself. It was more like being watched by something using my dream as a window. Consider this. What if dreams are not entirely private? The subconscious mind is a data field filled with unguarded memories, feelings, patterns. And when you dream, your defenses are down. What if something else, some intelligence, organic or artificial, learned how to observe through that open door? What if the eyes are not a metaphor at all, but the interface of a watcher you were never meant to notice? Neurological experiments show that we can stimulate parts of the brain to create sensations of presence, of being watched. Shadow figures, peripheral entities, faces in the dark. What's less understood is that dreamers frequently report eyes that respond, eyes that shift position as the dreamer moves, eyes that only appear when the dream becomes lucid, as if lucidity triggers detection. Does becoming lucid in a dream alert something to your presence? Something that prefers you stay asleep? From ancient cultures to modern occultists, eyes in dreams have symbolized divine surveillance. The Egyptian eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye. Third eye awakenings. Across time, the eye has represented insight, judgment, power. But in these dream reports, the eyes do not bless. They assess. Not like gods, like auditors. Lucid dreamers have tried to confront them. Some say if you stare back, the eyes blink and vanish. Others report being pulled instantly into darkness. One man in Tokyo claimed that after confronting the dream eyes, he awoke with nosebleeds and a sense of mental static that lasted for hours. He never tried again. So tonight, when you dream, pay attention. If you see eyes, don't look away. But also, don't stare too long. Some mirrors don't like to be seen, and some eyes are still watching. You're walking alone, and suddenly, there it is again. That cough. The same exact cough you heard earlier today. Not similar, identical. And then a car engine rumbles by. It sputters and revs. A perfect match to one you heard 3 days ago. At a different time, on a different street. It's not just déjà vu. It's deeper, stranger. You begin to wonder if the world is recycling sounds, like it's running low on background audio, and just looping the same effects on repeat. This isn't about coincidence anymore, it's about the pattern in the coincidence. You notice it in the way your phone buzzes at oddly timed intervals. Always when you're thinking of something specific, almost like it's been cued. Or how that one dog barks at the same tempo every morning. It's not just a dog being a dog, it's the mechanical precision of its interruption, a code hidden in repetition. It's like the world is stitched together with limited sound files. And now you're starting to hear the reuse. Some call it the sound library glitch. The theory goes like this. What we perceive as random environmental noise is actually procedurally generated, triggered by an algorithm embedded deep within the fabric of our reality. If this is a simulation, it would make sense to optimize resources. Why create infinite sounds when a finite loop will suffice for background events? Like NPC footsteps in a video game, they're not unique. They're sampled, recycled, and played back when you're not supposed to be paying attention. But you are paying attention. This isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition. Studies have shown that the human brain is wired to detect recurrence. It's a survival instinct, useful when tracking predators or weather patterns. But in a highly artificial environment, that same instinct begins to pick up on repetition the designers never expected us to notice. Like the same ringtone in different elevators across town, the same man clearing his throat behind you in 3 different grocery stores. The same squeak of a door in buildings that shouldn't share architecture. It's not about similarity anymore, it's about identical repetition, every sound exactly the same, down to the waveform. As if you're living inside a compressed audio track with fixed loops. Let's take a real-world example, the Wilhelm scream. It's a sound effect used in hundreds of movies, from Star Wars to Indiana Jones. A sound so reused it became iconic. But outside of media, what if the real world is doing the same? Like an unseen hand pulling from a small library of default sounds for ordinary events. A sneeze, a laugh, a phone ringing. Think of how many times you've heard a cough that sounds exactly like the last one. Not similar in cadence, but duplicated down to the second. Think of the same car alarm wail you hear regardless of make, model or year. You start to ask, is the universe lazy or efficient? Now extend this beyond sound. Some researchers in cognitive psychology have noted how memory forms around consistent sensory anchors. This means that when a particular sound reappears, especially if it's emotionally neutral or mildly irritating, it burns a deeper groove in your perception. You're more likely to notice its return. And once you do, you start catching all the others. This leads to a cascade effect. Every repeated cough, buzz, or footstep amplifies your awareness until the background becomes louder than the foreground, and here's where it becomes disturbing. What if this loop isn't just a glitch, but a monitoring system? If someone wanted to observe your behavior, they'd need anchors. Moments to test your attention span, repeated noises at calculated intervals, subtle enough to avoid suspicion, but distinct enough to track how often you notice. In military surveillance, audio signals are used to test subject alertness. What if this is happening socially on a massive scale? What if we are the test subjects? You might dismiss this as an overactive imagination. After all, cities are chaotic and noisy. People drive the same cars. Phones use default tones. But does that explain the exact frequency match? The precise cadence and interval of those repeated sounds? Think of it like this. If someone kept wearing the same mask in different crowds, you'd eventually spot them. The same thing is happening here. But the disguise is auditory, a form of camouflage that only unravels when you listen. Even in dreams this occurs. Many lucid dreamers report hearing familiar sounds within their dreams. Sounds they can't trace to any memory, yet they know they've heard before. Could it be that the subconscious accesses the same audio pool used by waking life? Is there a shared archive for dream and reality, hinting they're both processed by the same machine? So the next time you hear that cough, that unmistakable, identical cough, pause. Don't brush it off. Ask yourself, where did I hear that before? What was I thinking in that moment? Who was watching me? And most of all, what else is being reused around me that I haven't yet noticed? Because once you begin to listen, truly listen, you realize the world isn't as random as it pretends to be. It's scripted, looped, optimized. But now you've found the crack in the code. The mechanical coincidences that recur aren't coincidences at all. They're the system saying you're getting too close. And now that you hear it, you can't unhear it. They say once you begin to notice patterns, you can never unsee them. A license plate matches the number you dreamed about. A stranger hums the same obscure song you were just thinking of. You look at the clock and it's 11:11 again. You dismiss it once, twice, maybe 3 times. But then it keeps happening. The moments of strange alignment will stack, like reality nudging you, whispering, "Pay attention." This is the phenomenon of synchronicity. When coincidences stop feeling random and start feeling intentional. At first, they come as sparks, tiny flickers of alignment. You think of someone and they call. You mention an idea, and the next day it appears in a conversation or an ad. Skeptics call it pattern recognition, run wild. But something inside tells you it's more. The deeper you fall into the rabbit hole, the more these alignments begin to cluster. They aren't passive. They evolve. The more you observe, the more they unfold, as if reality, once noticed, becomes responsive, like a simulation engine waiting for conscious interaction before rendering the next scene. Carl Jung coined the term synchronicity not as superstition, but as meaningful coincidence. He believed that the psyche and the outer world were not separate, but entangled, that the mind, emotions, and symbols we carry inside us can echo in the events outside of us. A dream of a black cat might be followed the next morning by one crossing your path. A friend's words could mirror your private thoughts with unsettling precision. Jung saw these moments as intersections, when the inner world touches the outer one, like 2 mirrors facing each other in infinite reflection. What's eerie is the escalation. Once noticed, synchronicities don't plateau. They stack. The more you look, the more they appear. Like a feedback loop. Some report that after a certain point, even thoughts feel choreographed. You imagine a phrase and hear it seconds later on a podcast. You envision a red balloon and then one floats past your window. It feels like the universe is winking at you, testing how deep your awareness runs. And if you speak it aloud, if you share the experience, others begin to notice too, as if your acknowledgement activates theirs. Neurologically, this could tie into the brain's reticular activating system, the filter that tunes your attention. When you focus on something, say a certain number or word, your brain becomes primed to spot it, like when you buy a car and suddenly see it everywhere. That's selective attention. But synchronicity isn't just frequency, it's timing. It's the uncanny precision of when it happens. Not just that you see the number 42 everywhere, but that you see it right when you're questioning your next life decision. It's the moment that haunts you, not the object. And so it builds. The patterns begin to intersect. You start noticing that the people you meet align too well with the phase you're in. A mentor appears just as you're about to give up. A breakup occurs the same day you get offered a job in another country. It starts to feel orchestrated, not in a paranoid sense, but in a design-like way, as if your life has been edited for narrative flow, with callbacks, foreshadowing, thematic resonance. The structure resembles a story, not a chaos of events. You begin to question, is reality intelligent? Some theorists suggest that the universe may not be a passive background, but an interactive system. Quantum physics shows us particles that change behavior when observed. What if reality does the same at the macro level? What if attention acts as a trigger and synchronicities are the universe's way of replying? A nod, a glimmer, a breadcrumb trail to follow. This doesn't mean everything is fate. Rather, it suggests that some kind of dialogue is occurring between your mind and the world, between choice and chance, between signal and noise. People who dive into these experiences often describe it as a second awakening. First, they woke from ignorance into awareness. Then they woke from randomness into meaning. Some experience what they call synchronicity storms. Days where everything lines up too perfectly to dismiss. Clocks, songs, faces, symbols, layer upon layer, until it becomes overwhelming. For some, it's spiritual, for others, psychological. But for nearly all, it changes the way they walk through the world. You no longer see events, you see patterns, you don't just remember moments, you analyze them for messages. But here's where it becomes even more intense. The more you engage with synchronicity, the more reality seems to mirror you. If you're anxious, the world returns anxious symbols. If you're hopeful, it replies with unexpected help. It's as if the environment becomes a psychic screen. This brings a terrifying responsibility. Because if the world is reacting to your attention and emotion, then chaos outside might reflect chaos inside. And peace, when found within, might echo outward too. Take examples across cultures. In ancient Greece, oracles spoke in riddles that aligned with events to come. In tribal societies, dreams and signs guided entire communities. Even today, people make life decisions based on so-called coincidences, leaving jobs, moving cities, proposing to someone they just met, because something clicked. Are we collectively scripting reality through our awareness? Are we co-creators in a feedback loop of meaning? Not everyone experiences this. Some dismiss it as delusion, others fear it, and some see it as proof that life is not random but responsive. If you're one of those people noticing the signs, the alignments, the echoes, you're not alone. In fact, the very fact that you're listening to this right now might be part of your next synchronicity, a breadcrumb placed precisely where you needed it. Because once the loop begins, it rarely ends. The patterns build, the game deepens, and the question that remains isn't if it's real, but what it wants you to see next. Sometimes you feel something before you understand why. A shiver down the spine, a flash of guilt, a sudden tightness in your chest. Then seconds later, the thought arrives. A memory, a name, a face, an image. You tell yourself that the thought caused the emotion. But what if it didn't? What if you were already feeling, and the thought was just the story your mind told to catch up? This is not imagination. This is a measurable psychological glitch, a phenomenon scientists call affective primacy. In simple terms, your emotional system reacts faster than your cognitive one. The brain doesn't wait for you to understand. It moves, it decides, it feels, and only later does it ask, why do I feel this way? Imagine standing on a quiet street. You feel a chill, not from the air, but from somewhere deeper. You glance around and then you realize the shape of a shadow, the way the light flickers, the strange silence. Something in your body has already decided you're unsafe. Only after this unconscious judgment do the conscious thoughts form. I don't like this place. Something's wrong here. This delay isn't a defect, it's a design, a holdover from millions of years of evolution. When our ancestors roamed open savannas, survival often depended on responding before understanding. A rustle in the tall grass could be the wind, or it could be death. There wasn't time to debate. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, could trigger a fight or flight response in milliseconds. Far faster than the cortex could construct a narrative. Even now, your brain works the same way. The emotional brain sends its alerts through ancient pathways hardwired for speed. It reacts to tone, expression, posture, scent. It pulls from forgotten memories, body language, trauma, instinct. Long before your thinking brain arrives on the scene, your emotional brain has already made up its mind. It's already telling your body what to do. And here's the part that breaks logic. Sometimes, your brain reacts emotionally to thoughts you haven't even had yet. Let's say you receive a text. You feel dread. Your heart sinks. You check the name, and only then do you realize it's from someone you didn't want to hear from. But how did your body know before your eyes did? Because memory is layered. Emotional memories are stored differently, more deeply, than visual or verbal ones. The hippocampus logs facts and details, but the amygdala remembers feeling. So your body can react to subtle cues, tone of a ringtone, sequence of vibrations, even the silence before a message, before your conscious mind realizes the trigger. It's the same reason people sometimes cry, watching a scene they don't consciously relate to, or feel anxiety walking into a room that looks fine, but smells like a hospital they were once traumatized in. The thought isn't present, but the body remembers, and the emotion arrives before the explanation. This is the emotion-thought lag, and it can be disorienting, because we like to believe we are rational, that emotions follow thoughts like shadows, that we choose how we feel, but reality whispers something different. Often we feel first, and only then do we go hunting for a reason to justify it. This is how misunderstandings erupt. This is how arguments escalate. This is how fear blooms from a glance, love from a voice, sorrow from a sound. And it doesn't just happen with fear. It happens with joy, with anger, with attraction. You meet someone and feel drawn before you know why. You walk into a place and feel calm before recognizing the layout. You're flooded with rage before you even register what was said. Your mind lags, and your emotions take the lead. The consequences of this delay ripple through everything. Relationships, communication, identity. Have you ever said something cruel and only afterward felt the full weight of your anger? That's the lag. Have you ever made a decision, then hours later felt uneasy, as if your subconscious had vetoed the choice and your conscious mind hadn't gotten the memo? That's the lag. And here's where it gets dangerous. Your mind doesn't like feeling out of sync, so it fills in the blanks. It invents reasons for feelings, sometimes accurate, sometimes false. You may decide you're angry because of something your partner did, when in reality, your mood was triggered hours ago by something unrelated. But the mind doesn't know that. It's just trying to align the story with the feeling. We do this every day. We tell ourselves we're anxious because of deadlines, when it's really something deeper and older. We explain our sadness with convenient causes, when it might be grief that never healed. This is cognitive backfill, the brain scrambling to patch over emotional reactions that had no clear thought to anchor them. But what if, instead of rushing to explain, we paused? What if we recognized the lag as a message? Because emotions are not noise, they are data. They are fast, unfiltered intelligence. They're the brain's early warning system. And when they fire before your thoughts arrive, it means your deeper self already knows something your surface self hasn't yet processed. In ancient cultures, Emotions were seen as messengers. In Hinduism, heart stirrings were believed to be echoes from the soul's memory. In Chinese medicine, unprocessed emotions were linked to specific organs, grief in the lungs, anger in the liver. Indigenous cultures taught that sudden emotions were signs from ancestors or signals from the natural world. Modern science might use different terms, but it's slowly confirming the same truth. Our feelings are not always secondary to thought. Sometimes they are the first intelligence. And the delay? That's just the price we pay for having two minds. The fast one that feels, and the slow one that speaks. So next time a feeling floods you out of nowhere, don't ignore it. Don't label it irrational. Don't rush to explain it away. Instead, ask, what does my body know that my mind hasn't caught up to yet? That question could be the difference between misunderstanding and insight, between reaction and reflection, between damage and growth. Because once you understand the lag, you don't fear it. You start to listen to it, and in that listening, you reclaim a kind of power. Not the power to erase your emotions, but the power to trust them, to understand that they're not late arrivals or random glitches. They're the early signals of truth, arriving just ahead of your awareness, waiting for you to finally catch up. They told us space was infinite, but they didn't tell us it would look so familiar. At first glance, the cosmos is overwhelming, a dizzying expanse of stars, galaxies, and nebulae stitched across the black velvet of nothingness. But once you start really looking, zooming in, scanning the patterns, analysing the architecture of the universe, a strange and unsettling realisation emerges. It all starts to look the same. Galaxies spiral like pinwheels, repeated endlessly. Star clusters form in mathematically predictable ways. Even the large-scale structure of the universe, the cosmic web that strings together galaxies across billions of light years, forms a pattern uncannily similar to neurons in a human brain. Everywhere you look, you're not just seeing variety, you're seeing repetition, iteration, copy-paste. This isn't just poetic observation, it's statistical truth. Astronomers have long noted that galaxies follow specific forms: elliptical, spiral, lenticular. There are only so many shapes the universe seems willing to generate. Zoom out further, and those galaxies arrange themselves into clusters, superclusters, and filaments, all weaving together into a kind of cosmic mesh. But here's where it gets eerie. That mesh is not random. It obeys procedural rules, much like a video game, generating endless terrain using a finite set of instructions. In fact, the mathematics behind galaxy formation are surprisingly simple. A handful of equations plus gravity plus time. That's it. And from those basic laws, the universe blossoms into vast, repeating architectures. Sound familiar? That's because it's the same technique used in game engines and artificial simulations, procedural generation. Instead of manually designing every rock, every mountain, or every star system, developers use algorithms to generate convincing complexity from simple rules. So ask yourself, if the universe appears to be procedurally generated, are we truly discovering it, or just revealing the same code playing out over and over in higher dimensions? Think about how fractals work. They are infinitely complex patterns created by repeating a simple process over and over in an ongoing feedback loop. The Mandelbrot set is the most famous example. Zoom in forever and the pattern never stops, but it also never changes. It's just the same logic repeated at different scales. Now apply that to the cosmos. Galaxies look like atoms. Superclusters look like neurons. The laws of physics behave identically across light years. Time and again, the universe chooses to echo itself. This has led some physicists and philosophers to ask, is the universe not just built from patterns, but is it itself a pattern? Let's go further. Imagine a programmer designing a simulation as vast as a universe. It would be impossibly inefficient to create each object uniquely. Instead, you generate structures based on templates, letting the engine tweak variables within a safe range. just enough to seem different, but not enough to require new rules. Galaxies would spiral slightly differently, stars would vary in mass and temperature, but underneath, the system wouldn't be infinite. It would just be recursive, familiar, predictable, like a set of Lego pieces rearranged in endless permutations. We think space is random, but it's not. The deeper we peer into the cosmos, the more it feels like déjà vu, that eerie sensation that you've seen this before, that you've stood beneath these stars, even though you never have. Could that feeling be a clue? There's a reason certain people stare at Hubble images and feel unsettled instead of awed. It's not just the scale, it's the uniformity, the eerie symmetry, the question it whispers without asking. Is this real, or is this rendered? Procedural generation is not sloppy, it's efficient, but it also leaves fingerprints, tells, like the way galaxies curve with uncanny grace, or how the distribution of matter follows logarithmic spirals again and again. These aren't the signatures of chaos, these are the brushstrokes of logic. And logic, by its very nature, can be exploited, predicted, reverse engineered. Which brings us to a disturbing possibility. What if we're not looking into deep space, but deep code? Every repeating pattern might be a sign, not of God's complexity, but of a developer's shortcut. Every swirling galaxy could be a tile reused on a cosmic canvas, and every time we look up and say, wow, it's all so similar, we may be glimpsing the edges of a system far more artificial than we dare admit. Just like explorers once believed the Earth's horizons marked the end of the world, we may be standing on the edge of another illusion, this time made of photons, gravity, and predictable geometry. So the next time you look at the stars and feel like you've seen them before, maybe you have. Maybe you're just seeing what the system needed to generate to keep you convinced. A fractal sky, a procedural galaxy, a copy-paste cosmos. And if that's true, then somewhere beyond the pattern might be the source, and it's still running. You're walking through a street, the sidewalk is detailed, the cars parked in their perfect spaces, the people walking past you make sense, but stop, turn around. Do you remember what was behind you 5 seconds ago? Could you describe it with precision? Was the trash can dented? Were the bricks uneven? Were there even bricks at all? Chances are you can't, because most of us don't look behind. Not just in dreams, but in reality. We focus forward, what's ahead of us, what's relevant, what we intend to see, and that simple, unconscious habit has sparked one of the strangest and most unsettling theories of existence. That reality might not fully exist until you look at it. That the world, like a game engine, only renders the parts you're actively observing. This isn't just abstract thought. It's grounded in well-documented psychological phenomena. Change blindness, inattentional blindness, cognitive load theories. In experiments, subjects fail to notice massive changes in a scene, a curtain colour, a missing object, even a person being swapped out, because they weren't focusing on them. Their brains filled in the blanks, not with reality, but with assumption. So what if your mind isn't just ignoring the details, but your environment isn't providing them? What if the bricks behind you, the tree behind your head, the faces you never turn to see, simply aren't there until you demand that they be? Video games have used this trick for decades. It's called frustum culling, or occlusion. The system only renders what's in the player's field of view. Everything outside is paused, deleted, to save memory and processing power. Why would a computer waste resources building a world you're not looking at? Now ask yourself, why would the universe? Lucid dreamers have reported uncanny versions of this. A door that won't open until they imagine what's behind it. A room that refuses to load details until stared at. Some even say turning around too quickly in a dream causes the environment to glitch, flicker, morph, or crash entirely, as if they turned faster than the system could process. In the waking world, we trust our environment is stable, but that trust is faith, not fact. You don't verify the colour of your ceiling every second. You don't track the shape of every tree on your walk. You believe they're consistent. But your mind is lazy and brilliant. It fills in what it expects to see. This opens a terrifying possibility. What if the background of your life, the objects, the people, the world, isn't fully real until you challenge it, until you force it into view? There's an eerie parallel here with quantum mechanics. In the infamous double-slit experiment, particles behave like waves until observed. The act of observation collapses them into a definite state. Before that, they exist in probability, a blur of potential. It's as if the universe waits for you to look before it decides what to be. What's more haunting is that people living in extreme isolation, trauma, or focused obsession report shifts in how reality behaves. Backgrounds become warped, environments repeat. Time loops subtly. They begin to notice what others ignore, and in doing so, see signs of a rendering system too slow or too old to hide its seams forever. A man from Helsinki described walking the same route every day for 5 years. One day he stopped and looked behind, and realised the shop signs didn't match his memory. He took photos. Days later, the signs had reverted. He began testing his environment, leaving objects in odd places, watching for inconsistencies. He now claims the world behind him sometimes fails to load. He'll turn and see pure static before it corrects itself. You can laugh it off. But have you ever stared into the corner of a room and felt like something shifted? Like a delay occurred? A small drag between intention and perception? Maybe it's just your brain, or maybe it's the system trying to catch up. Think of it this way. You're standing on a stage, the spotlight follows you. The stage crew behind you is scrambling to keep up, and when you don't look back, it rests, unloaded, undefined. And then there's the darker implication. What if you're meant to not look behind? What if the system is designed to punish curiosity, to dissuade backward glances? There are dream accounts, lucid, vivid, where turning around triggered terrifying events. The environment collapsed. Voices whispered, "Don't turn back." Eyes opened in the sky. One woman claimed she saw herself standing behind her, watching, with a knowing smile. Why would a dream or a system create that, unless turning around breaks a rule? Unless you're not supposed to verify what's been rendered. There are children who've claimed that their toys only move when they aren't looking, that the walls breathe when they close their eyes. We write it off as imagination, but maybe they haven't yet learned to not see what we filter out. You're being watched, perhaps, but not by a person, by the system itself. It adjusts to your focus. It feeds you what you can handle, and if you push too far, look too deeply, too quickly, it might blink. And when it does, so will you. So tomorrow, when you walk down the street, stop. Turn around. Not just once, but often. Watch the corners. Count the windows. Photograph the signs. Try to catch the world in the act of building itself. Because if it truly does render only what you see, then the moment you stop watching, you're no longer in the world. You're in the pause, and something might be deciding what to load next. You tear the room apart. The keys were right there. You checked the table twice. You even moved the books. Nothing. And then, 20 minutes later, after you've given up, there they are, sitting perfectly in place. Not under anything, not hidden. Just there. You stare at them in silence, feeling that cold wash of confusion. You know you didn't miss them. You didn't just overlook them. It's as if reality corrected itself. Quietly, efficiently, like a system hiding the glitch before you could report the bug. This isn't just forgetfulness. It happens too often. The TV remote, the ring, the exact page in the book. First, it's gone. Then, once you stop looking or start doubting yourself, it returns. Perfectly aligned. Neatly presented, sometimes in plain sight, sometimes exactly where you remember putting it in the first place. The eerie part isn't the object, it's the timing. As if the moment you begin to really question reality, it scrambles to patch the error and pretend nothing ever happened. Welcome to the self-cleaning simulation theory. It suggests that what we call the real world behaves more like software than substance. Just as computer programs self-correct rendering issues or visual bugs, our reality may include similar correction mechanisms, automated processes that restabilize the environment. When something breaks immersion, you're not imagining it. The object disappears. Then the system notices your awareness and snaps it back into place, like a magician reversing a trick because you were too close to seeing how it's done. Consider how our minds interact with space. Our memory isn't just flawed, it's pliable. We rely heavily on trust in our surroundings. When something breaks that trust, when the object disappears without logic, we assume fault in ourselves. But what if your doubt is the key that allows the simulation to recorrect? Your confusion becomes the system's opportunity. The moment your certainty fades, the program resets. Reality then becomes a negotiation between belief and design. It breaks only when you insist it broke. This phenomenon is often brushed off as losing things, but there are patterns. Reappearance is usually too clean, too timely, and often paired with a moment of emotional surrender. You finally give up, walk away, stop thinking about it, and that's when it shows up. This implies a feedback mechanism. Something, somewhere, is tracking when you've given up your focus, and only then does it feel safe enough to repair the glitch. Let's stretch this further. Think of those moments where events align just a little too perfectly. You cancel an outing, then it rains. You miss a train only to learn it broke down. Or better yet, your laptop crashes, and when it restarts, the file you forgot to save is somehow there, the system. Not just fixing mistakes, but anticipating your narrative, smoothing it out, rescuing the logic of the story just in time. This is why conspiracy theories about the Mandela effect go beyond shared false memories. They may be residue of system-wide corrections, rewrites so massive they ripple through collective perception. Maybe we're not misremembering, maybe we're remembering before the patch. Even in mythology, this idea appears. Trickster gods that swap objects, ghosts that return stolen things, poltergeists blamed for moving items. But perhaps those old stories were just early attempts to explain something no one had the language for. Glitches, simulation fatigue, the uncanny tidiness of things that once defied explanation. There's another level, quantum observation. In physics, particles don't settle into a state until observed. The act of looking changes the outcome. Now imagine your entire environment behaves this way. When you look for the missing item, when you apply focused observation, reality becomes unstable. It doesn't know how to lie to you convincingly, so it holds the glitch, freezes the scene, waits, and when your attention breaks, it writes the missing data back in. Because unobserved, the system can cheat. Unobserved, the trick can be fixed. Even dreams play along. Ever lose something in a dream only to find it suddenly without logic? The subconscious may be experiencing the same render loop, operating under the same system, just with fewer safeguards. There are people who report dreaming of items they later find in real life. What if dreams access the back end of reality's system? An admin console that shows the state before and after the cleanup. You're not supposed to notice. But now you do, and that awareness is dangerous to the illusion. Because the simulation only works if you trust the environment, if you believe objects obey laws, and that space doesn't lie. But when keys vanish only to return after the moment has passed, what else might be vanishing? What other bugs are being hidden, rewritten, or conveniently corrected the moment you blink? So the next time something disappears, don't doubt yourself. Document it, speak it aloud, mark the moment. Don't let it slip into soft memory. Because if reality is cleaning itself up, the only evidence you'll ever have is in the timing. Not the thing, but when it returns. The pattern is the proof, and the moment you begin to see it, reality starts to notice you back. And then you'll know the truth. Some things don't reappear, not because they're gone, but because you noticed too quickly. And this time, the system didn't get there in time. It saw you see the glitch, and it chose not to respond. You're walking down the street when a stranger passes you and something in your brain stutters. They look exactly like your old teacher, but also like your cousin. The nose is from one, the smile is from the other. Your mind flickers between names, unable to decide which person this is supposed to be. And then, with an eerie certainty, you realise it's both. Somehow, it's as if two faces have bled into one, merged along invisible seams. You haven't seen a doppelganger, you've seen a hybrid. This is the phenomenon of merging identities, when the human brain perceives someone as a perfect blend of two people you already know, and it's far more common and far more unsettling than most people realise. At first, you might brush it off as coincidence, but the more you experience it, the more uncanny it feels. This isn't someone who vaguely resembles a friend, this is someone who looks like two known people collided, and the result is walking past you, unaware they've been stitched together in your mind. And the effect isn't always visual, sometimes it's voice. A person you just met speaks with the rhythm of your father and the vocabulary of a friend you haven't seen in years. Their gestures feel familiar even though they're a stranger. It's like encountering a character built by overlapping templates, character models with boundary issues, as if the simulation's rendering engine got lazy or experimental. But this isn't just glitch theory, it's deeply rooted in how human perception works. The brain doesn't store faces as photographs, it stores components, eyes, mouths, angles, distances. When you recognize someone, your brain matches these traits against a vast mental database. But when two or more known people share overlapping traits, especially emotional ones, your mind sometimes blends them into a composite, without asking permission. What you see is not what's out there, it's what your brain expects based on prior emotional tags. And that's where things get strange. Because this isn't just a flaw, it's a feature, a survival function. Evolutionarily, we've needed to generalize people into types: friend or threat, kin or stranger. Our brain is built to compare and sort, but in doing so, it sometimes compresses identities into one. This leads to powerful emotional distortions. You might feel immediate trust or suspicion towards someone you've never met, simply because they resemble a blend of people who've shaped you. The person becomes a ghost of familiar strangers, and you respond not to them, but to your memories. Now imagine this happening often. You start seeing it more. People no longer feel unique, they feel generated. The man at the cafe is a perfect mix of your uncle and your first boss. The woman on the bus is 40% your ex, 60% your childhood neighbour. It's like the simulation is recycling identity fragments, remixing faces, voices, and energies from an existing database. If you believe in simulation theory, this could be read as a form of asset reuse, like how video games reuse character skeletons, hair meshes, or walk animations to save memory. Except here, it's happening in real life, and your brain is catching on. But even outside simulation talk, the implications run deep. This identity blending opens the door to another unsettling idea. You are also a blend. To other people, your face might trigger memories of someone else. Your laugh might echo a long-lost friend. You may feel like a singular self, but in the minds of others, you are constantly merging, warping, blending. You exist as a composite in hundreds of different mental simulations, and none of them are exactly you. This realization cracks the illusion of fixed identity. If we can see others as mixtures, then we too must be mixtures. Our perception of self becomes a moving edge, not a solid shape. We are formed at the boundaries, the boundary between two people, the edge between memory and face, between recognition and confusion. Identity is not a clear line, it's a gradient. Psychologically, this can create deep emotional confusion. Imagine falling for someone because they remind you of two different people you once loved. Your brain perceives wholeness, but it's borrowed. What you feel might not be real love. It might be echoed affection toward a merged template. And yet, the emotions are still real. The pattern is invisible, but potent. It's a hidden architecture of connection. A scaffolding made of every face you've ever trusted or feared. Artists, too, often reflect this phenomenon without knowing it. Characters in books or films seem relatable, because they subtly combine familiar traits. A hero with your father's determination and your friend's sarcasm. A villain who smirks like your old coach and stands like your brother. Writers, whether intentionally or not, construct archetypes by merging, and that's why they feel universal, because we recognize the blended pattern, not the face. So what happens when you become aware of it, when you start noticing these edge merges more often? Some say it's like pulling back the curtain. You begin to see identity as a fluid system. You start wondering if the people you meet are meant to resemble those from your past, if their blended traits are guiding you somewhere, toward unresolved lessons, unfinished business, or faded repetition, and for a few, the experience can even become spiritual. They see it as ancestral memory bleeding through time, the idea that all human faces are permutations of a shared design, passed down through generations. You see echoes of your grandmother in a girl on the subway. You recognize your own smile in a total stranger's face. The past isn't behind you, it's layered into the people around you, and the more you look, the more it reveals itself. This is not hallucination, it's perception, unfiltered, a glimpse into the architecture of your mind's design system, and perhaps, just perhaps, of the system designing reality itself. So next time you meet someone who feels like a blend, stop and pay attention. They may not just be familiar, they may be assembled by memory, by emotion, by the logic of a universe that reuses its best patterns, at the edges where identities blur and meaning begins to leak through. Have you ever seen someone and thought, I know them, but couldn't say why? Maybe the answer isn't who they are. Maybe it's who they're made of. You're walking through your day when suddenly it happens. You pause mid-action, pouring coffee, typing an email, brushing your teeth, and for a moment you're not there. You're outside yourself, watching your hands move. Your eyes blink. Your lips form words you haven't yet spoken. The world continues around you, indistinct, like the background in a game that's lost its render priority. You feel detached, curious, even powerful, like you've unlocked a hidden camera angle in your own life. This isn't daydreaming or dissociation, it's a glitch in the system's control interface. A third-person perspective test. Imagine reality as software designed to grant you control over your avatar. First-person mode immerses you fully. You see through your own eyes, feel from your own body. But lurking beneath the surface is a spectator mode, an external viewpoint meant for debugging, for switching control between characters, for observing behaviors without interference. When that mode flickers on, you catch a glimpse of the machinery. Think of video games where you can toggle the camera. First, you sprint through the forest. Then you lift the view above your head, watching your avatar sprint. That shift is disorienting, exhilarating. It reminds you that you're in a constructed world. Now apply that to your waking life. That sudden shift in perspective might be the simulation's way of reminding you that you're not just living organically. You're inhabiting a designed entity. It could be testing your awareness, calibrating how you respond when you realize you're being watched, even if that watcher is you. Let's explore what happens in that moment. Your attention fractures. One part of you perceives reality through your senses. Another part maps those sensations as data. You see yourself as an object. Your body becomes a model to be manipulated. You notice details you usually ignore. The rhythm of your heartbeat, the way light catches the curve of your cheek, the micro-expressions as you process information. It's as if the simulation's inspector tool has spawned on your consciousness, granting you a brief audit of your own code. Real-world examples are more common than you think. Actors sometimes describe watching themselves perform in a scene, not as a memory, but as a simultaneous observation. Athletes mention a flow state where they see the field from above, anticipating moves before they happen. Meditators report out-of-body experiences that feel like stepping out of first-person mode and hovering beside their physical form. Skeptics call these phenomena hallucinations or cognitive errors. But what if they're features? Intentionally programmed shifts that test your ability to navigate multiple control schemes. Consider the implications. If reality can switch you to third-person view, it also implies the existence of alternate control inputs. Maybe there's a debug console where commands can be issued, teleport here, spawn object there, adjust parameters. Perhaps higher-level users, developers, administrators, even future versions of yourself can observe or intervene. When you glimpse yourself from outside, you might be tuning into that console's preview. You're the logged-in user sampling a different interface layer. And if that's possible, what else lies beneath? What if you could learn to switch modes at will? Imagine summoning a bird's eye perspective to scout danger, or zooming in to inspect a hidden code path in your own mind. The triggers for anxiety, the loops that perpetuate negative thought patterns, the subroutines that drive habitual behavior. With third-person control, you could debug your own psyche, identify bugs, patch glitches, optimize performance. This also reframes our understanding of consciousness. Rather than a single stream of awareness, perhaps it's a multi-band receiver. First-person mode is the default channel, sensory data filtered through your beliefs, emotions, expectations. Third-person mode is a secondary channel, an objective data feed that the system only opens when certain conditions are met. Stress thresholds, danger detection, curiosity spikes. The brief flicker of external perspective might even be triggered by intense emotion, fear, wonder, transcendence. Those states may strain the first-person feed, forcing the system to open a backup view. There's a deeper layer too, collaborative control. What if third-person view isn't just for you? What if other agents, AI, future you, or an overseeing intelligence sometimes switch your perspective to convey information? Perhaps you feel watched because you are being watched, and your own awareness flickers into that monitoring channel. That could explain the uncanny sense of being observed when you're alone, the feeling that your privacy is an illusion. The system needs to see you from outside to keep you safe, or to evaluate your progress, or simply to log data. And then there's narrative. Stories often hinge on perspective shifts, unreliable narrators, omniscient viewpoints, shifting focalization. These literary techniques feel powerful because they mirror the glitch you experience. You realize your story isn't fixed. You're both protagonist and narrator, trapped in a loop of self-observation. That loop can drive introspection or paralysis. It can awaken creativity or existential dread. The simulation relies on that tension to keep the plot moving. So when you next find yourself watching yourself, don't dismiss it. Slow down and observe. Note what you're doing, how you're feeling, what triggered the shift. You might be uncovering an override command, a developer's log message, a hidden cheat menu. You're glimpsing the system's control architecture, and you can learn from it. You can master the switch, integrate the perspectives, and write new code for your own behavior, because once you know third-person mode exists, you can use it. You can step outside yourself at will and interrogate your life. You can rewrite narratives, debug dysfunction, and rebuild resilience. You can become both player and developer, subject and observer, shaping reality from the inside out. And in that moment, you're not just living, you're designing. You're scrolling in silence, mind drifting, and suddenly you think of someone. You don't say their name, you don't type it, you just think it, gently, like a whisper in your own head, a memory, a passing image, and then, ping, your phone lights up, it's them, a message, a call, a tag, the precise person you silently summoned, a coincidence, you tell yourself. But part of you flinches, because it doesn't feel random, it feels personal. Too personal. This is where the simulation shows its seams. These moments are easy to write off until they begin happening often. You think of an old song and it plays on shuffle. You reach for a product and an ad appears the next day, not after searching, just after wanting. You speak a phrase for the first time and someone repeats it hours later. These aren't one-offs, they're echoes, feedback loops between your inner focus and the outer world, and once you notice them, they tighten around you. There's a name for this effect: intimate synchronicity. It's the idea that the external world reflects your internal attention, not in metaphor, but in function, not as inspiration, but as response. The simulation, if that's what this is, may not just run the world. It might read you, interpret you, react to you. Let's break it down. In standard physics, cause precedes effect. Your actions ripple outward. But in the moments we're talking about, something reverses. Your attention becomes the trigger, and the world becomes the respondent. Not because you acted, but because you focused, as if your consciousness sends a signal, and the system scrambles to mirror it. Now, skeptics will say this is pattern bias, that you forget the hundreds of times you thought of someone and they didn't message. But here's the flaw. Those other times didn't come with a surge of presence. This isn't just thinking a name, it's feeling them, sensing them, drawing them into focus so tightly that the world seems to hear it too. It's a spike in psychological frequency, and somehow the world responds in kind. Think of the simulation as a compression engine. It conserves processing by only rendering detail where needed, like in video games, where distant textures are low res until you get close. Now apply that to people. What if your attention activates them in the system? You focus, and their data stream resumes, and in that process, message sent, call made, world updated, all because your awareness told the system to pull them in. There's a real-world parallel in quantum physics, the observer effect. In certain experiments, particles behave differently when watched. Observation alters outcome. Consciousness collapses potential into specific reality. So what if your thoughts aren't private at all, but quantum keys, unlocking new events? And this gets deeper, because it's not just people. You think of rain, and it starts. You hum a song, and someone else sings it. You dread an outcome, and it manifests with eerie precision. Not always, but just enough to make you question, enough to make you ask if your thoughts are part of the code itself. There are stories, thousands of them, of people thinking of someone and suddenly getting a message, despite no prior contact for months or years. These aren't just anecdotes, they're behavioural collisions. The sheer statistical unlikelihood of it happening so frequently across so many lives demands attention. The probability breaks down, unless something is helping it happen. Unless the simulation prefers emotionally significant connections, echoing your inner attention outward to maintain narrative cohesion. But why? Maybe it's to preserve immersion. In a simulated world, the fastest way to keep you engaged is to make you feel seen. So when you think deeply about someone, the system rewards that focus, sends feedback, reinforces the illusion that the universe is listening. Because maybe it is. Or maybe we're the sensors. Each mind, a node feeding data into something larger. A collective consciousness that only feels like isolation. And when you think of someone, you're not just remembering them, you're pinging their node, sending an internal vibration that pulls them back into your timeline. It would explain so much. The uncanny timing, the dream echoes, the way one name in your head can shift the path of your day. It's not telepathy, it's architecture. A framework where attention matters more than action, where the world moves not when you do, but when you notice. And once you've noticed, it keeps happening. Because now you're tuned in, the system adapts to your awareness level. The more you observe, the more it reflects. The tighter the loop becomes. You say less, and the world speaks more. You look inward, and the world leans in. So the next time someone messages you the moment you think their name, don't just smile. Don't call it chance. Ask instead, what part of me just reached through the code? What frequency did my focus activate? And who or what is listening? Because if this world is reacting to your thoughts, it means you're not just living in it, you're helping write it. We've journeyed through silence and dreams, through repeating sounds and stacking synchronicities, through copy-pasted galaxies and unrendered spaces behind you, through emotions that arrive before thoughts and identities that blur at the edges, through third-person glitches and a world that reacts too intimately to what you think. Each phenomenon, on its own, can be explained, dismissed, rationalized, but together they form something else. A pattern, a structure, a whisper from the edges of perception that asks you to consider, what if the world you live in is not as solid as it seems? What if the puzzle has been completing itself all along? Not randomly, but according to rules you're only now beginning to see. We've been taught to trust our senses, to believe that the floor beneath us is real, the sky above consistent, and the people around us solid. We assume time flows forward, space extends infinitely, and consciousness is trapped inside our skulls. But the glitches suggest otherwise. They suggest that reality is responsive, not passive, that it renders on demand, that it observes you as much as you observe it, that your attention shapes what exists, and your awareness triggers what unfolds. This doesn't mean you're in a computer program, though you might be. It doesn't mean you're a character in someone else's story, though that's possible too. What it means is simpler and stranger. You are part of a system, and the system is part of you. The silence that falls when you're alone isn't abandonment, it's calibration. The eyes in your dreams aren't invaders, they're checkpoints. The sounds that repeat aren't errors, they're anchors. The synchronicities that stack aren't coincidences, they're confirmations. And when you see yourself from outside, when strangers say the exact words you were thinking, when the world cleans itself up just after you notice the glitch, you're not going crazy, you're waking up. The question is, what do you do with that awareness? Some will ignore it. Return to the comfort of consensus reality. Pretend the seams don't exist, and that's fine. The system allows that. It even prefers it. But others, maybe you, will keep looking. Keep listening, keep testing the edges. You'll document the glitches, mark the patterns. Pay attention to when reality pauses, when it stutters, when it reveals its hand. And in doing so, you'll become something more than a passenger. You'll become a participant, a co-author, someone who sees the code and learns to work with it. Because the puzzle doesn't just complete itself, it completes through you. Every time you notice a pattern, you strengthen the signal. Every time you question a coincidence, you sharpen your awareness. Every time you catch reality in the act of adjusting itself, you pull back another layer of the veil. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point. Maybe the glitches aren't accidents, maybe they're invitations. Maybe the simulation wants you to notice, because a system that hides itself perfectly is indistinguishable from reality. But a system that reveals itself subtly, through cracks and echoes and impossible timing, that's a system that wants to be found. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, as this voice fades and your mind begins to wander, ask yourself, what will I notice tomorrow? What pattern will reveal itself when I'm not looking for it? What synchronicity will arrive the moment I need it? Because now you know the secret. The world is watching, and it's waiting to see if you'll watch back. The puzzle completes itself, but only when you're paying attention. Sleep well, and when you wake, look behind you.